Hey, this is Neve. Welcome to the Payoff Podcast. On this episode, we're joined by Roger Gregg, founder and president of Lightyear, and owner of one of the oldest and most beloved pubs in Surrey Hills, Sydney, the Carrington. Lightyear is an intelligent accounts payable solution which helps all kinds of businesses save on their accounts payable costs. But the inspiration behind the app came from Roger's background in hospitality. In between cracking jokes and making Kate and I laugh, Roger tells us about InVitbox, which was the first iteration of Lightyear, his experience working closely with his brother Chris, and how he's taken inspiration and lessons from the world of hospitality and applied that to running a tech company. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Roger. Thanks a million for joining Kate and I today for the podcast. We really wanted to have a chat with you because we know that Lightyear has got a lot of similarities in regards to values as KeyPay. And we also know you've been friends with the guys for a number of years and had a few beers with them and whatnot as well.
Well, they tended to follow us around, so you just had to sort of be polite to them. But yeah, let's call them friends. Sure.
I've got the feeling I'm going to be laughing a lot during this episode already. So do you want to just start off by telling us a little bit about your background and your career and what led to Lightyear?
Yeah, okay. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So I was originally from Northern Ireland, as my accent sort of suggests. When I was 16, 17, I wanted to be a dentist, but unfortunately my A-level grades didn't allow that to happen. So I had to find some sort of university degree that would take me in or join the army. And I was never cut out to, be a soldier. I was lucky enough there was a computers and maths degree and business degree at Queen's Belfast. So I did that. And this was back in the really early days of computing. We still had classes that had little sort of wooden boards with pegs and clips and lights and batteries and things like that. So it was really early days, not showing my age. But anyway, I sort of went into business and computing, but never coded. But I understood statistics and first principles, then decided to be an accountant, then moved to Australia. So I ran furniture companies in Belfast and then hospitality companies in Australia. And the common theme with all of those, which came to a head in sort of 2009, 2010, was each of those businesses were processing lots of bills from different suppliers. And it just was a light bulb moment for me by 2010 going, surely we shouldn't be spending $350,000 as a company just on the salaries of people to process bills. And so I sort of looked around and decided to get into tech again, accidentally. Yeah, but that's sort of my journey. Computers, not computers, back to computers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were primed for the zero sort of space after studying computer science and then being an accountant. It's like,
I know, right? I was the love child, But funny, the irony is when we actually set out and we were probably 8 months away from launching the first product, which was called InVitbox, we actually didn't have a clue whether we were going to be literally investing in machines to print CD-ROMs and, work out how to sell CDs, or whether we were going to go with this stupid cloud thing. So yes, I might have been primed for zero, but it was totally coincidental. Sort of the path of zero sort of coincided with what we were doing. And funny, when we look back, even when we looked back after we launched and we looked around the room and went, does anyone remember the time that we actually made a conscious decision to go cloud? And everyone was like, actually, no, we just sort of went that way.
Accidentally went that way.
Yeah, and it was a lot because of the, I think the traffic and the noise that was happening around zero that just brought us down that stream. It wasn't a conscious decision, but we just sort of followed the loud person in the room.
Yeah. Luckily.
Luckily. Indeed.
It's interesting that you were an accountant, but you had a bit of tech experience. How did you kind of go about taking the idea that you had and turning it into something?
We were a little naive. When we started looking it was Keystone Hospitality, I was running ops for at the time, and it was sort of part of my role in that was finance and procedure and contracts and things like that. And we realized all these paper bills were causing a lot of friction in the organization. And so when we looked around to find the best, let's call it paperless solutions in market, it was a crazy moment where we just realized every single person who was selling enterprise paperless automation software, their sales pitch started with, okay, so you get your paper. It's like, what? So the world's best paperless solutions start with paper, right? So we thought, this is crazy. There must be technology out there. We will actually just use existing technology and put it together into a workflow and create a solution. Little did we know that technology didn't exist. So we had to become a technology company, which is difficult when you were literally on, $50 to get you from Monday to Friday night. It's a startup. The last thing you want to do is invest in more tech. But we brought in guys who were very, very good coders, had worked in the banking sector. And they created the tech with us, yeah.
That's mad that something that seems, I suppose, so simple now just wasn't available then, and just grasped the opportunity. It's awesome.
Yeah, and funny timing was, it was weird because we launched, I think it was within a couple of months of Receipt Bank, although Receipt Bank launched on the other side of the world. They had a slightly different target market with more on the receipt sort of side as it was at the time, and we were more about bills. But randomly, there was another person started in Sydney and launched about a month after us. So the three that we were conscious of in the world all literally launched within 4 months of each other. And it was just, again, timing for all of us was, I don't think we all consciously decided they're Xero, they're making a change in the accounting space, let's follow them. And I'm not saying that Xero was the only, partner that we had at the time, but it was just that there was a general change happening in business automation with Microsoft, finally coming off desktop, so to speak, and there was a move towards automation generally, not just in the accounting space. So yeah, we were lucky with our timing. Yeah.
Did having sort of competitors pop their heads up like that at the time, did you see that as something helpful, considering that helps to educate the customer about what this actually is? Yeah, and
so those really early days, and we were sort of Receipt Banking ourselves. We were certainly in the first 20 add-ons in the Xero ecosystem. But those really early roadshows where you were in the cellar of a hotel, and there was 15 apps in the room. It was quite good for Xero and for Receipt Banking ourselves because we were sort of put in the corner of the room with Receipt Bank, and Xero would basically send people over. And if someone came over at the time and said, so I've got receipts. Oh no, this was the thing. We thought it was going to be, but it was actually it was perfect. Michael Wood, who headed up Receipt Bank at the time, great guy. And so basically if someone came to us and said, I've got a client with a bucket load of receipts, back then we said, okay, well, talk to Michael. And if someone came to Michael and said, I've got this client with a supply chain and suppliers, he would talk to InvitBox, as it was in the day.
Yeah, great.
So, it was actually really easy. And the conversation for the customer then became really easy because it's not like they were having different add-ons convince them to go this way or that way. The add-ons were actually saying, no, you need to chat to this other add-on. And there was clarity.
Yeah.
So the way they sort of structured those roadshows, but also the ecosystem that was there at the time, those first 20 apps, we all looked after each other. We all had each other's back. And we were as much looking out for leads for each other as we were for ourselves. So yeah, we came from hospitality, and everything in hospitality is about making sure the customer has the best experience, because it's really difficult to get the customer. Once you get them, it's actually quite easy to retain them if you put the effort into it. And that sort of retention approach and customer service approach has always been through, even before I was in hospitality, I ran a furniture company, and we as well as manufacturing furniture, we had retail outlets, and it was all about that customer relationship. And so that has always been in our journey. And again, I think if we'd have dropped ourselves back in 2012 into an arena or an ecosystem that was actually quite competitive, and it was all about sales and stuff like that, we wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. That's not to say we wouldn't have stayed in it. But we look back really fondly on that time, and it's allowed us to actually cement those principles that we have about service and go, do you know what? You can actually be a service-led business with a care approach, and sales spill out of that, as opposed to being, okay, you've got to make 30 calls a day, get 10 leads, and go down that funnel. It works for some. It's just not necessarily in our DNA.
That's really interesting. I think that's also where KeyPay aligns with Lightyear.
Totally. And to be honest, the guys are friends, so it's like
that helps. So jumping ahead a little with InvitBox, we did a bit of reading, and we know that Intuit ended up buying it. We saw that they didn't really do much with it apart from sort of maintain the customer base, and didn't really develop or sell it.
Yeah.
And then eventually you guys took it back and enhanced it and formed Lightyear. So just wanted to know, what do you think the reason was that Intuit didn't do anything with it?
Well, there's a couple of parts to what InVitbox was. So there was the product InVitbox that everyone saw and used, but then there was underlying tech. So the underlying tech, which was this ability to, in effect, break open PDFs, to have a user very, very simply create a set of maps to extract data from the PDFs. And you could do that within a minute and lock it down again, and then just have more PDFs thrown at the system and that data extracted. That was really useful for Intuit in TurboTax in the US. So it allowed, and so the tech, and that's no secret, was, put into, the TurboTax product, which allowed customers to basically just upload a previous year's tax form, as opposed to 30 pages of going through it a page at a time to update it for this year. They could just throw a PDF at it or a pay slip or whatever it was. TurboTax would extract the data and put it in. So the tech, the first year we were there, the tech was integrated into other systems within Intuit, and that was the focus. And then the other thing that happened at the time was Uber appeared on the scene in the US. This was around about 2014-ish, 2015. And an opportunity presented itself in the US because there were all of a sudden 1.5 million, 2.5 million people who needed something more than TurboTax and something less than QuickBooks. So basically, QuickBooks Self-Employed was a large focus for Intuit, and they have, that's been a massively successful product for them. So it was a case that when InVitbox came across, we were still doing stuff with the tech, but then Intuit's focus moved on to, other opportunities which presented itself, so growth globally, growth in Australia and stuff like that. And I think InVitbox just it stalled a little bit. And to Intuit's credit, they said, we're not really doing our customers a service here by actually having no progression in the product. And so they reached out to us again, and we, came to an understanding and an agreement with them that allowed us to, in effect, build the product and continue on the roadmap that we felt that the product and the customer deserved, migrate the customers across who wanted to move across, and then we sunsetted InVitbox for Intuit. So it was a win for everyone. It was just one of those acquisitions that, behind the scenes, a lot of the tech did actually make it into product, but Intuit's focus at the time was elsewhere, and they did the right thing by the customers that still remained on InVitbox.
Right, interesting. There's not much information on that online. It's all just a little line, so it's good to get a bit more context to that.
Yeah, very interesting. So you co-founded InVitbox with your brother, and he is now the CEO of Lightyear.
Yes.
How was it working so closely with a sibling? Like, was there any major fights that you got into? No. Randomly,
you see TV programs about brothers never speaking again, and this, that, and the other. Chris and I have always had a really, really good relationship. So there's a bit of an age gap between us. So I still remember, changing his diaper and stuff like that, and lots of other stories that we can't talk about here, but we'll be talking about in December at Christmas party. But we have very, very similar, not ethics as such, but basically similar approach, which is all customer focused. I bring a certain set of skills. Chris brings another set of skills, and they actually work really, really well together. That's not to say two other siblings could work as well together as we do, and that's not to say there's not disagreements on, direction or this, that, and the other, but that's good in any organization. I think it actually helps that we are brothers and we've known each other for so long, and if we were going to fall out, our mother would, clip us around the ears and pull us back into line. So we just don't. We realize at the end of the day, family's family, and that's just, our blood family, our mum, dad, siblings, things like that. But it's also the family that we have around us in Lightyear. Candice has been with us. She was with us in InVitbox, so she has been with us for 7 years. And so there is a sort of continuity of people around us that we consider family, and we'll have open conversations about stuff, but it's never at the expense of, you'll never offend someone. People in the organisation know that you're going to speak your mind and respect you for it. But, Chris and I have just a great relationship together. It's really good.
That's lovely. It must be great to go on such a big journey with a sibling,
It is. And after the acquisition of InVitbox, I think I would have missed not having someone to actually reminisce about. It's nice to actually, it's like you go on holiday with someone and you share something together. Everything just seems a little brighter and a little bit better. So to have that with my best mate and my brother is amazing. Yeah.
Lovely.
Nice.
Are you guys crying?
Yeah, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Edit that part out. In Vitbox and Lightyear, there's something that make life easier in your industry. So how do you stay relevant? Do you innovate? Do you have design thinking processes that you do for enhancing the product? How do you come about with those updates?
We probably do what most people do. You know, we have a lot of deep dive sessions with customers, sort of follow me homes, to use an expression and a process that Intuit went through. But a lot of the time, it probably comes back to that sort of first principles approach that I had when I was learning statistics and stuff like that. You sometimes need to look past the problem, that is the actual pain, to actually what is trying to be achieved. You know, we were taught to be process re-engineers, so it's you look at the individual process, and sometimes you do improve upon the processes themselves. But sometimes the thing that you need to do is actually look at the start and look at the end and actually just re-engineer everything in the middle, and that means throwing stuff away. And it goes back to those pre and Vitbox days where when we were talking to other hospitality groups around Sydney and we said, listen, you guys have obviously got the same problem as us. You know, what do you want? And every one of them said, we want a better way to handle paper, right? But paper was the problem, right? So it was that Henry Ford moment, you know, basically, what do you want, faster horse? Well, I hear you. You want to get stuff done quicker, but it's not necessarily a horse that you need to do it, right? So a lot of the time you get the insights from talking to customers, but it's not from what the customer actually tells you. It's not their suggestions, and that's not to dismiss the, you know, the feedback that we get from them. But by chatting to maybe 20 or 30 customers, you see commonality in the thing that they're trying to solve, and that actually is then what you set out to solve. It's not that you try and improve the process that they're asking you to prove, but by having those conversations and understanding their business as much as we can, it allows us then to create solutions that are not just improving upon what is there at the moment.
Yeah, I think often people don't realise that they need something until it's created.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And there's still, thankfully, a lot of people out there that are still processing by paper, still doing payroll off spreadsheets and things like that. So the fact that not everyone converted, you know, 5 years ago allows us and KeyPay and other people to enter the industry with an opportunity to make a business for themselves, you know. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there.
Yeah. Just on that, it seems like customer education was perhaps a huge part of your business when Vitbox was formed. Do you still find that you have to put that much education into teaching the customer why they need your product, or do you think the customer is becoming more savvy?
Definitely more savvy. 5-6 years ago, it was as much about convincing them that the person doing accounts payable was not inevitable like death and taxes, right? Everyone just assumed that they had someone there 4 days a week, that had that person 4 days a week for 5 years. Surely that's the way it has to be. So there was a conversation and a persuasion piece around them changing their thinking before convincing them that our product, this product that no one had heard of, using an approach that no one had heard of, was the way to go. Now I think people realize that automation is available, but they're probably still thinking about how they can handle paper better, and that's just for us. And a lot of what we say is, you know, yeah, you're going to get paper. That's fine. And Lightyear can handle paper. We can, you know, you can scan it, send it in, snap it with the mobile app. We'll use OCR on it. We have that as a fallback data extraction piece. But our primary data extraction piece is this breaking open of PDFs and parsing the metadata, which gives you real-time and 100% accurate data. And so the persuasion piece is not now about changing their process. It's about letting paper go to a degree. And just, for us, it's asking the supplier just to send a PDF. So it's a different type of persuasion. It's a lot easier now than it was. I remember, you know, having conversations with potential clients back in 2013, and you would spend an hour just convincing them that, you know, Jim in the corner of the room who does 4 days a week, he didn't set out in life to be a data entry professional. There's more opportunity for Jim in your organization if you just stop him doing data entry and allow him to do contract negotiation or whatever. So it's a different type of conversation now. It is easier, but the market is definitely more educated, yeah.
Great. So for our listeners that don't know this about you, you own the Carrington in Surrey Hills. So you're a publican as well as a tech entrepreneur. I would love to know what suite of tech tools you've chosen to implement in the Carrington.
Good question. So we, thankfully for you guys, use KeyPay. And that you guys are integrated into QuickBooks. So we use QuickBooks and KeyPay for our payroll. We use Lightyear for our accounts payable. And we use Revel as our point of sale system. There's other sort of marketing tools and things like that, but from an operational financial perspective, that's the suite of tools that we use, yeah.
Excellent. That's definitely the scoop, I think.
And since you bought the Carrington, how have you balanced your time between the hospitality industry and the startup tech industry?
Poorly. Especially if you ask Matt, our RGM at the Carrington. So we bought the Carrington just as we'd finished really with InvitBox. It was something, we love hospitality. And so at the time, there was a couple of years of spending enough time at the Carrington. Matt would say sometimes maybe a bit too much. And then that came full circle because as soon as we got back into Lightyear, that has just become, it's become everything. The Carrington is a very established business. Matt and the team are more capable than me, to be perfectly honest, of running a hospitality venue. I tend to have an opinion about food, which shouldn't be shared with chefs. I'm a terrible barman, so I shouldn't be behind the bar. So thankfully with Cloud, I can just do all of the finances from my desk and not have to go there. But I think startup is, you guys will know it as well. It's all or nothing. It's really hard to divide your time. It's hard to do a startup but have a job on the side. You need to immerse yourself in it, and that's just where we're at. Even though we're established with Lightyear because we have that history with InvitBox and we've got a large customer base, it's still startup. You're still evolving product. You're still convincing new sets of people about this concept. And so it's startup mentality, and it just needs to be all in.
So you've got an office in Belfast as well as in Sydney, correct?
We do. So there's the Game of Thrones studio in Belfast, and on one side of it is the Titanic slipway and the other side of it is our office. Yeah.
Nicely placed.
And it was really weird. I was back there January last year, just as we were setting the office up, and with jet lag, I drove down to Queen's Road, which is the area, the Titanic Quarter in Belfast, just to go to the office at 5 a.m. And there was a lollipop lady, as we call them. You guys know what lollipop that is, right?
Lady, yes.
So basically, in a fluorescent jacket, stopping traffic and crossing the road were about 100 extras from Game of Thrones of people dragging limbs and axes and horses crossing the road, everyone in costume, and it's just like, this is surreal.
How do they get any work done in that office? I'd be like up against the window.
Well, funny, the entire Game of Thrones studio in Belfast, there's the outside set and it's all ringed with 40-foot container lorries. So you actually can't see it, but you can look over it and see the tops of the turrets and things like that. But we make sure that we obviously close the guys in, block all the windows just to get some work done.
No daylight.
So just on that, how do you find like trying to keep a consistent culture throughout two regions when you're so far away?
The fact that Chris is there and I'm here has actually made it, I'll say really easy. It's relatively easy. Mm-hmm. I think those first initial hires are really important. So in our Belfast office, there's Tom, who has worked in Australia. He was in operations at PayPal. He's moved back to the UK, so he understands Australia. The CTO in Belfast is a guy called Stevie McGee, who randomly I basically lived with for 6 years in Belfast in the 90s, played hockey with him. So I understand Stevie's personality, or lack of it, as sorry, Stevie, and sort of he understands mine as well, and Candace over here knows Chris. So there's a really good sort of cross mix of a senior leadership that understand and just get each other, and that helps then distill that sort of, when Roger said this is what he meant. They can almost translate stuff to the people in Belfast that maybe are confused about what I'm saying, or I think I'm funny when really I'm not. They explain the joke or lack of. So that leadership team initially was really important, but now it's not so much about a senior leadership team. It's actually about the hires being the right personality fit as you grow the org. it's, if you've got two candidates and one has got a capability score of 10 and the other one's got a capability score of 8, but this person over here with the 8 is a better fit. Right now, as you're growing, that's really important. Mm-hmm. So, it's difficult, but certainly having the right people across the markets helps it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how we work as well. So many similarities in the sense of you can teach a skill, but you can't teach like the personality as well.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So it really, really makes a difference to our culture as well.
Yeah, for sure. So that was fantastic. Thanks a mil for joining us on the podcast. Do you want to let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you both about Lightyear and the Carrington?
Well, great. Thanks very much. So the Lightyear is lightyear.cloud. The Carrington is the oldest pub in Surrey Hills. It's on Burke Street. You can bring your dog, and we've got bonus indeed. Or if you just like dogs, and obviously you don't have one, as most people do, you go there and just hang out with your dog, right?
This is Niamh.
And this is Kate. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, why don't you share it with a friend?
And if you really liked it, subscribe and give us a rating.
If you want to find out more about KeyPay, go to keypay.com.
See you next time.